Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Jenna.
I'm Seth.
I'm Charles.
And I'm Chris.
And we made it through the introductions good with nobody talking over anybody. That's a plus. We're on a roll here. So today is going to be kind of exciting. We're going to be talking about the new Dune 2021 movie, part one, since part two obviously isn't out yet. And
I don't even talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. God.
I thought they filmed it all at once.
Well,
I did too.
Yeah.
They
That
haven't
was-
even filmed part two yet.
No. But they have
Right?
Wait.
apparently they secured a 2-film deal when they made the agreement with Warner Brothers. So, but they haven't yet greenlit the start of part two. So, with all the, by the time you get all the acting done and the special effects, we're probably looking at another year out before we see part two, I would guess.
At least.
Way
They
more
said
than a
we're
year,
lucky.
probably.
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah.
Like, if we're lucky, if this is successful enough that they say go. Because,
Right.
from what I read, the director, he's ready. He's like biting at the chop to to get this movie started. Obviously, the actors are probably like, do I sign up for another film? Do I get into this? Do I not? I
Right.
mean, they got things they got to do too.
Yeah. Well, and so I think all of us have seen it. Charles seen parts of it, although he kind of confessed to falling asleep because he was really tired. So he'll have to watch it again probably. But what did everybody think? Let's start with Jenna.
Okay, I really appreciated how the director and the obviously the people who deal with landscape, scenery, and everything appreciated the original David Finch film.
Mhm.
Like, there was a lot of little odes in the imagery. I mean, because you have the source material, you're gonna have some of the same lines, the same emphasis, the story points, but there's definitely a lot of great little touches in terms of just the style of the buildings, the uniforms, all that stuff that they maintained, and I appreciated that. But then just expanded upon, which was beautiful.
Yeah. Chris, how about you?
I enjoyed it a lot. I'm concerned over something we were just talking about with the part two not being started yet, because the movie is really built around a longer story that isn't all told. So it's not complete, and that's obvious when you watch the movie. However, I think I read a comment that you made somewhere. This is like, a little bit of Game of Thrones in space in terms of how they do the storytelling and things like that. So I really enjoyed it. The soundtrack was phenomenal. The scenery shots that they did were absolutely, a cliche word out there. It was stunning. It was great. I loved it. It's a bit of a departure in terms of a better made movie than the previously made Dune movie.
Right.
And I think they cut some things out I would have liked to have seen in there. But overall, I enjoyed it. It was a 10 out of 10 for me. I think that value of how I like the movie goes down the further we get away from the possibility of a part two, though. So this movie does not work, to be frank, without a part two.
Right.
But if you know the story of Dune and you know where it's going, I would hope that, they do a lot of these visions in the movie that Paul Atreides has when he starts interacting with the spice, and it gives a little bit of telling towards the future and everything. I would hope that some of those scenes come to fruition, Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them are not what he thought they might be. But you know, they depict a holy war in some of those visions, and I hope that would. I was hoping before I found out they hadn't even started on part 2 that some of those were glimpses of the next movie to come out. So it doesn't sound like that might be the case, but it does show some potential there, I think. So I loved it overall.
All right, let's jump to Linda. Linda, what'd you think? You're muted.
I liked it. I thought it was like Jenna said, a good homage to the previous ones, and I think it has a really good storyline. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the young protagonist, as always, you know, they always have to find some little good-looking kid to do this. Well, you know, it's got Jason Momoa in it, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was good. All right, let's jump to Seth. Seth, what'd you think?
This is movie of the year for me.
Yeah.
And if the second part is delayed significantly, it's going to cause me physical distress.
Agreed.
Dune is
Yeah.
Dune is maybe one of the very first science fiction novels that I read.
Same here.
It's I've read it numerous times throughout the years. And I really want to read it again, and I'm gonna. But I also really I still love the David Lynch version. I think that's a lot of fun. Yet I didn't get to rewatch that before watching this one, and I want to rewatch the sci-fi miniseries that they did sometime in the 2000s.
Yeah, I never watched that.
It was
Yeah,
well
I've
done.
only seen
we could
about half
have
of
a
it. It was
watching
good.
party.
Yeah.
You maybe should.
Yeah.
It was good from what I recall. I didn't get through all of it, but it was good.
Huh.
Yeah, I still have it on DVD. I wonder if the DVDs are any good yet.
Hope
Probably.
so. Because I
Uh,
need to show that version to Aaron too. If we're not going to do a watch party, I need to borrow that, Seth.
I'd be happy to, but it would be a long watch party. Don't get me wrong, that miniseries is long,
Yeah.
but this was so true to the books. I was just so happy because I was quoting along with the movie in parts.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
'cause some of those lines are just burned into my brain.
Right. How about you, Charles? Any thoughts on the parts you did see? Or did you get enough of exposure to it
Oh,
to inform an
I
opinion?
did. I'm not as excited about it as everybody. I do have to say something though. Because Dune was one of my first books, sci-fi books also. But I think I realized a little while ago, I looked something up and I read a page of Dune. I must have been, I don't know what I was doing, but I read a page or two again.
Yeah.
And I went, well, I didn't remember the writing being as good as it was.
Uh,
Well, but I was a kid. I mean, I was
Yeah.
middle school or something. So
Right.
I was,
you didn't have a lot of perspective at that point.
well, I was too young to, I think, appreciate good writing. So,
Yeah.
or at least that wasn't what I was going for at the time, right? I was looking for gunfire or something at that age.
Oh, right. Big space battles and
Yeah. Dune didn't quite.
yeah. More of a
So-
Star Wars type of
Yeah, that's
movie.
what I was expecting. I think so. I'm always Dune's kind of a weird spot for me. And this was no different. It's there's a lot of awe and a lot of long scenes, and yeah.
right.
So, and
I'm
that's
gonna have to
where-
watch it. I'm gonna have to watch it when I'm not the end of the day.
Right. Right. Yeah, Jenna, what?
I was just going to say, I think there are some people who are going to have Charles reactions that I think for some people the pacing didn't work, and we still have to get to Chris, but I think we should talk more about that later because I have seen some of the feedback from friends who are like, the pacing sucked. I was just sitting there the whole time like, do something.
Right. Yeah. No, we hit Chris.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
I had already commented earlier, but I'll add on that pacing part. Dune, it's not a small book, right?
No.
It's a big story to talk about, and there's a lot of things going on in the story with these noble houses, and getting control of this planet Dune. And for those of you that aren't aware of the story, one of the things is, he who controls the spice controls the universe. The spice has extreme value to these noble houses. It powers, space travel and a lot of other things. So there's a lot to talk about. And Dune, the story itself, actually continues for several more books.
Yeah.
It's the saga, if you will, of the story. And I am glad that they're going to do this in multiple parts. Again, they've only filmed part 1. Okay, you mentioned Jason Momoa earlier, Linda, and I will say I was actually kind of surprised. If I recall correctly, they actually didn't find a reason to get his shirt off in this one. Is that right?
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, what's up
they
with
managed to
that?
keep a shirt on him the entire film.
I wonder if he felt respected for that.
I don't know. I was actually kind of surprised, but he played was it Duncan?
Duncan, Idaho.
Yeah, Duncan, and
Yeah.
he did a phenomenal job in this role. And Duncan is a battle-hardened warrior, a trusted trainer of the troops and all this stuff. And he definitely lives up to the name. I think they gave him a much better action-packed role than I think of the previous film, in showing off his skills and how great of a warrior he was. So,
But I think it was still, I need to reread the book, but I think it was still truer to the book than the previous film was to him.
It was.
Yeah.
Or Duncan, Idaho, that is.
Yeah, and I actually caught myself having to go back to try and remember what was part of the book versus what was part of the previous movie, because this did deviate a fair amount from the previous movie. Granted, the previous movie is the entire book basically crammed into one storytelling. This one covers only a portion of the book, so you don't get the full story, but it's still very well told, in my opinion. And pacing, I think, could be, again, an issue if you're not aware of the full story. You're not anticipating anything coming up, or you're not aware what's coming up. So that can be a hard thing to portray on screen. But I think they did a good job that if there wasn't a lot going on, they were giving you plenty of eye candy in the meantime to kind of awe about. So I enjoyed it still.
Yeah, and I think, I think part of the reason for the pacing too, along the lines of Game of Thrones, which we referenced, was that, they're doing a lot of building up the drama and the political intrigue between the houses and the emperor, and also the Fremen, and what their goals are. So I thought that was good. And I think, we ended up watching it with a couple of friends here on HBO Max, and one of the guys, Joel, is a huge Dune fan of the books, and so he was very pleased with the movie and how closely it followed and matched the books. But our big concern was the fact that, it's not like Star Wars, where there's, constant space battles and lightsaber wars and that kind of stuff. It's more, political intrigue, and it's more, I don't want to say highbrow, but more kind of an intellectual thing, where you're sitting there and kind of watching what the interplay between these different houses and trying to figure out where that's going. And the concern was, well, is the public that that is preconditioned to like these Transformer style, Spider-Man style action films, are they going to actually embrace this new type of movie, or this type of movie, and enough that it's going to be successful and we'll see more like it?
If there's not an explosion every 30 seconds, I'm out. But I have I was going to say pretty much the same thing about the plot. At least in the beginning, it's all turning up the heat on the boiler with political intrigue and kind of introducing us to the houses. I'm surprised we didn't see the Emperor himself at some point.
Yeah.
But that will be for movie 2.
Right.
Right.
Probably.
They said they'd already signed for 2 movies, though, right? It does, like,
Yeah.
they can't cancel it now if Americans get super bored.
Well, it's doing well in the box office from what I've seen, so it should be. They've pretty much already almost made their money for the first budget, for the first film. So I'm hopeful. I was just surprised knowing that they were going to do a multi-part movie that they didn't make the attempt to film it all at once. And maybe there's some other factors outside if that's what's been going on the last couple of years that kind of put it, too much strain on trying to film that. But I just want to see an announcement in the next 30 days that, yep, we've started on filming part 2 would be great.
Right.
And it would boost, I think, people wanting to go out and go see this one as opposed to being like, there's only part 1, they're not going to make another one. Yeah, we'll see.
So what I think they did very well, because like Seth and all of you have said, that this is such a big world and space epic. And they didn't obviously want to utilize David Finch's mind where you hear people's thoughts. I thought they did a really good job creating scenes and dialogue to explain the world in little pieces. So, but my only concern is for the average viewer who's expecting everything to be in your face. If they weren't listening, they could have missed important storylines, because like in the 1984 version, you actually see, you don't just hear, oh, they use spice to bend space and travel. You see it. You see the navigators.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like that was probably throughout the whole thing the only thing I really missed. I wished I could have seen the navigators in this version bend space to travel the ships. So then it just really drives home this spice is critical to this universe. I mean, beyond any understanding.
Yeah.
That and being a life extender.
You know what I thought was kind of interesting was that so the navigators in the Space Guild, they rely on the spice, which we know comes from, it's a byproduct of the worms on Arrakis. And
Worm poop.
What's that? Yeah,
Worm poop.
Right. And I thought it was interesting that the Space Guilds, the large transport ships that transport all these big freighters and everything, almost looked like giant space worms to me. And it seemed to me that, maybe that was an intentional thing because of the guild's reverence for the worms and the spice, and that they wanted to sort of reflect that in their ship design, I suppose.
But do they know that? I guess I can't remember, but I don't think they know that. The Fremen know that.
Yeah.
But no one else knows yet that the worms are the source of the spice.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but that
Spoiler.
in watching that kind of struck me that their ships were kind of these large, gigantic, 20 kilometers long or something. I mean, because they hold these giant frigates, which we see on the planet. And I don't know if you can find a picture of that, Linda. But they show.
So it could be a subconscious thing.
Because it could be.
The navigators consume so much spice that it mutates their bodies to nearly almost into like reverting back to a fetus almost. Is like some of the representation they had in the first movie of David Lynch, and I think it was a similar description in the book itself. So that it could be very much it's in their mind, they don't even know it.
Yeah. And the other thing I liked, so there's one of the pictures Linda's showing on screen now. These are the giant space frigates that belong to House Atreides, or Atreides. Atreides, yeah. And so they're this is when they're originally landing on the planet, and it kind of, to me, foreshadowed disaster, this scene, because when you see him leaving Caladan, all these giant frigates are hidden in the oceans of the planet, and you see them rising up out of the ocean. To to load up and head to Dune. And presumably they're being hidden under the ocean so that they're not susceptible to being destroyed by House Harkonnen or some other house, right? But now here they are on the planet Dune, and they're just sitting out here kind of exposed. They don't have any way to hide them. And, to me, that I don't know if that was because there really was no place to hide them, or because they just hadn't gotten far enough in their thinking to think, well, okay, we need to hide these things, or at least at the very minimum, we need to disperse them around the planet or something. Because then, of course, when the attack comes, they're particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, I will say that I don't know if they had too much concern around them, because they did have shields on all of the ships. Now we come to find out later that there are special weapons that can penetrate those shields, which I thought was an awesome way of how they portrayed it, because it's not like they were 100% defenseless from a normal attack anyways. But there is a scene where the Atreides come under attack from the Harkonnens and their special army, and they're dropping these unique kind of bombshells onto those ships that we just had up. And just before impact, you see it kind of slow down to kind of spin and penetrate the shield, and then drops the explosive device onto the ship. And I thought that was pretty cool, because they have a shield technology in this world of Dune, if you will, and you can have personal body armor, and you have to penetrate that armor, you have to come in with either some type of special weapon or come in kind of slowly, and the shield will allow that object to kind of penetrate it. And so it's kind of cool to see when you get your first real big battle that happens in the movie. There are bombs that have that unique technology built in, where they can just drop it on one of those ships and it'll slowly kind of penetrate the shield and then kind of drop onto it and explode. So I thought that was pretty awesome. But to your point, Bill, I don't know if they were that concerned about hiding it. You're right, though, that it's not like they had much of an option on a planet that was all sand.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, we also see that they have kind of a firearm that'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
But Jason Momoa was not impressed by it. The bullet has to slow down to go through the shield, and he just knocks it out of the way.
Yeah. Well, and I thought the fight scenes were really interesting because, they have these personal shields, right? So you're fighting like you would see ninjas fight. Right. But at the point at which the blade gets within about an inch of the body, you have to slow down to super slow speed in order to get through that shield to make a cut. And so it's this fast movement. And then all of a sudden, an instant slowdown for the last few inches, or the last inch there. And I thought they did a great job of the way they portrayed that weapons getting through the shields.
Yeah, and it makes sense,
flashes.
Like why.
Sorry.
Why they would go back to blades in spite of being a forward futuristic society, because fast projectiles like bullets, lasers are not going to work anymore because of this self-defense technology.
Right.
They're most of the combat, unless you've got these darts that you saw like the doctor use or the assassin, fast projectile weapons will not work anymore. So you have to get more intimate again with the fighting.
Yeah. Well, and I think you do see lasers at some point in the show, but you don't see lasers firing at anything that has a shield. And the reason is because of there's like almost like a nuclear reaction when that happens, and it's bad for both sides. So you can fire lasers, and you see some of that happening, but you only see it going after unshielded people or ships. So that's kind of an interesting twist as well.
Yeah, and you can't use shields out in the desert because they will drive the sandworms mad.
Right.
You will basically seal your own doom.
Yes.
Which is why in one of the dreams Paul has, we see a bunch of Fremen fighting a bunch of Sardaukar, and no one has shields. And the Sardaukar are getting
their butts
slaughtered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, speaking of the Sardaukar, I really appreciated the diversity of language and communication that they brought in this movie. Like, I thought it was really cool that House Atreides, instead of getting mind reading, between like Jessica and her son. They use sign language. Yeah.
It
To
was pretty sweet.
communicate as a background and to strategize, or that, you know, House Harkonnen has their own language from their planet and the Sardaukar have a language. Like I thought that language diversity was pretty cool.
Yeah, for the listeners, the Sardaukar are the Emperor's elite military force, right? And the Harkonnens, which we probably haven't mentioned, are the bad guys of the film. They're kind of like the Game of Thrones reference. What was the
who was the House of the Bastard? Because the House of the Bastard,
right,
that would be the appropriate match. I think.
Stark.
The Harkonnen.
Not Stark. It's the Boltons.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
the
different.
Boltons.
Sorry, different bastard.
Yeah.
The Boltons.
No,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Boltons.
on the Harkonnen, so they feel pretty slighted in this one because they basically, the way the movie starts out, how they're telling the story is the Harkonnens had been mining spice on that planet for a long time and became extremely wealthy off the spice. And then they basically had to leave, and House Atreides was coming on to take over the spice production and broker basically peace with the Fremen there. And Harkonnens were not having it. So that's the Baron pictured there. I thought the way the Baron was done for this production was phenomenal.
Stellan Skarsgård.
And I appreciated that
Yeah.
he wasn't as ugly as the first portrayal in the older film.
Right.
I think this one was done really, really well.
I thought he was
very dark.
Right, very dark, very menacing.
Yep.
You know, you worry sometimes that in the film that they're going to overplay the evil character to the point that it becomes a caricature or almost kind of ridiculous, but this I thought was spot on.
Yeah.
They did a really good job with it.
And
I don't think they could have gotten a better person than
No.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Right.
Like he's the king of that subtle, menacing,
He is.
Yes.
It is
conniving.
well,
scarily.
that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is that I thought the casting for this movie was kind of perfect. I mean,
I did too.
Granted, Jason Momoa plays Duncan Idaho as Jason Momoa. But,
Right.
That's hilarious, Seth. Real quick, just because I told Gina that like he basically plays himself as, you know, another character in these movies is what we're going to say going forward. So
yeah, he's just like, well, how would I act in space? How would I act if I were Aquaman?
yeah, that's pretty much it.
To his credit, I just love seeing Jason Momoa, so I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I liked Rebecca Ferguson. She plays Lady Jessica, the wife of Leto Atreides.
She was never
Concubine.
Yeah, they were never married.
Right.
Correct.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you're correct. Yep. And I thought she did a great job. I really liked her performance in that. I liked the way they portrayed the Bene Gesserit. I thought their costumes
super creepy.
Yeah, their costumes were great. That scene where the Bene Gesserit ship lands and the Mother Superior and a bunch of them come out of the ship and they're walking in the rain with the lights of that big lander kind of illuminating the thing. I thought that was just really, really mood setting, tone setting for the whole group. I really like that. I liked Oscar Isaac in the role of Leto Atreides. He was really good. I loved him in Rogue One as well. He's a great actor.
So they made a funny comment there when he's talking to Paul in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And he's like, what did you always want to be? And he's like, I always wanted to be a pilot. And Gina turns to me and she starts laughing. Like, oh, well, he has played a pilot in another universe, technically.
Right. Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck. He was really good too.
Yep.
A lot of gravitas there. He was really good. I liked them all. I want to see more of Zendaya. I think we're going to see a lot more of her in part two, part two of the movie.
Yeah. I was disappointed she didn't get more
airtime.
More. But her
screen time.
Her part really doesn't start until part two. So again, we have a lack of a story that there's more to be told here. And part one will fall short for some of these cast members. Their story doesn't begin until part two.
Right.
Yeah, without part 2, I don't think part 1 was worth the money because you're leaving your audience just completely unsatisfied.
Yeah.
On a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on a positive note, the cinematography was amazing. The acting was amazing. The way they adhered to the book was amazing. I mean, I definitely want to watch it again.
Oh, we need to talk about the sandworm effects.
Oh,
That
yeah.
attention to detail to create the sand waves when something that massive is coming at you in the sand. That was probably my favorite thing that they did that was totally worth it. It seems like it would be a small thing, but it just created a level of believability that and power that was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So even it's not like, there are scenes where they get really close to being, eaten up by a worm, and you'll see them try to escape. Now in the previous films or however it can be depicted, you can it seems like it's easy to run away. This sand is collapsing beneath them.
It's almost like quicksand, right?
Yeah, it's like a quicksand. So they're trying to run away while getting sucked in, and it adds to the suspense. They're like, boy, I don't know if you can make it out of this.
Yeah, you know what it was like for me when I saw that? My mind immediately went to that scene in Jurassic Park where the first one where the T-Rex is coming and that you see that water glass and the water just starts vibrating with the boom, boom like that, and you start seeing the desert do that ripple, and you're like, oh shit.
And that was an iconic scene in a way of portraying that something is coming in a daunting way. Yeah. And it's those little things that can completely make a movie, and people still talk about it. Bill, you're still referencing that scene from Jurassic Park. People are going to reference these sand scenes, I think, in those worms coming, for years to come, because that was done really well. That's not done in a whole lot of movies.
Right. I would agree. Yeah, I thought it was great the way they did that. It's just so many of the little things. When they fire those poison needles, and they race across the room, and then they hit the shield, and then they just slowly work through the personal shield, and you're fighting to try to get it out because you've got seconds before it gets through the shield and kills you. And you're just panicking. That would be kind of a horrifying thing, I think. So that just a lot of the little things like they did like that I thought was great, and also the costumes, the still suits worn by the Fremen. I mean, for being kind of an all grayish kind of a suit, I mean, there's so many layers and pieces to that. I thought they did a great job making those.
They really went for authenticity there. Even though it's a made up suit, right?
Right.
But they went to such lengths that you can just see every detail. So not just in the scenery, but then you can zero in almost on any part of the suit. And they basically left it to like, look, we're going to make this in the highest resolution possible, which means everything has to be pristine.
Right.
To do that,
Right.
Look at those suits. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I guess Seth, for our listeners, do you want to describe what the purpose of those suits is how they work for those that may not be familiar with Dune?
Well, the still suit is the way that the Fremen survive out in the desert. It's basically a full body suit, covers everything except for just a patch of skin. In the picture that Linda's got up right now, you can see everyone with their hoods off and whatnot, but in other parts in the film you'll see them completely suited up, and all you can see is just the face. And at one point you'll hear Kynes say that wearing a properly fitted still suit, you will lose only a thimbleful of water a day
in the desert,
whereas 2 hours out in the morning sun is enough to kill a person on Arrakis. Without such a thing.
So the suits pretty much, they recycle your sweat, all of your moisture, your exhalations.
Yeah,
all excretions.
And then they make it available as water that you can drink then through there's like a tube, I think.
There's a tube in the mask. That you can drink. And yes, it's a little disgusting, but it's also kind of cool.
Yeah. It's a way to
And-
survive.
I
And
wonder how many people are like, man, I got to stop eating garlic.
I'm pretty sure it filters that out.
yeah,
But
one would
there's
hope.
got to be some pretty gnarly cleaning of those things that goes on. I don't think you want to work in the part of the sitch where they're hanging
Still
those
suit
up
cleaning.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. Now
Cleaning them out.
now the interesting thing that we didn't really see any of until the very end was the Fremen riding the worms,
Ugh,
right?
yeah.
And I was really surprised when I can't remember what the actress's name was, that she was heading out and she activated that thumper and she was going to go
Yep.
tell everybody what was happening on Dune, that the Harkonnens attacked and wiped out the Atreides family.
Sharon
And
Duncan Brewster.
Played
Liette Kynes.
there you go.
Mhm.
And she's out in the desert and she's got the thumper to call the worm and she's got her hooks there. And I thought, oh, this is great. We're going to get to see her ride a
Oh, I know.
worm. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And then, no, she just,
Yeah.
it gets taken out.
It was like almost jumping out of my seat because she's up at the top of the Dune Hills and she whips out her.
I know.
I was like, finally.
Yes.
And then gets swallowed up by a worm.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting when she got stabbed from behind.
Yeah.
You saw a spray of water and not
Yeah.
of blood because she was in her still suit.
Right.
Right.
That was interesting.
There's a
And
couple
then-
scenes where they do that. Yep.
That was
Yeah.
cool.
And then, but I liked when she hit the ground, she knew she was done for, and she's surrounded by the Harkonnen soldiers, and she just starts rhythmically pounding the sand, which of course calls the worms. And of course,
I'm dead, but I'm taking you with me.
right.
Hell
And
yeah.
then that's where we see them all start sinking into the sand as the worm approaches, and the sand kind of turns to quicksand, and then all of a sudden you see this giant maw opening as things fall in.
Yep.
I thought it was amazing. One of the parts that really helped, I think, show the scale of the worm was when the harvester just got
Mhm.
swallowed up.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this gigantic harvester on the planet, scraping this spice off of the surface. And of course, the harvester breaks down and it's trapped. Well, no, it didn't break down. I guess the worm was coming and they were
Yeah,
calling
they had
in
to
a device
abandon
to
it.
take
Yeah.
the transporter and lift it off of the ground and move it to a new area. But the thing that came in to haul it away malfunctioned. So they couldn't get it off the ground. So they had to evacuate the troops off of it that were manning the thing. And then, you see the worm get there and then all of a sudden this gigantic harvester starts sinking into the sand and then all of a sudden you just see this gigantic maw and it just falls in there. So apparently
Yeah,
the
and I
worms
think-
are into heavy metal.
Yeah, we can talk about the worms here for a minute. So a couple things on those. One, for those of you that don't understand what attracts the worms, it's this rhythmic kind of impact on the sand that disturbs them. So they tend to show up for that. The way the Fremen cross the desert and stuff like that, there's a desert walk that they do that's supposed to mimic the natural flow of like the environment in the sand. So that's how the Fremen cross the desert and get around. To your other point, Bill, on the scale of the worms, this was actually the other scene I was going to mention. Was there's 2 or 3 scenes in the film where they do a great job of giving you an awesome visual of the worm, but also a scale.
Yeah.
So you understand how big it is. And in that scene, I still want to see it in theater. I watched it at home, but the visual from that was pretty great. And I'm really looking forward to going to the theater to see it because I just want to see how much you get pulled into it. The shots they do are very much intentional, and you feel like you're Paul standing in front of this worm at one point in one of the scenes that's shot, and it's pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
There were quite a few scenes. Like I was gonna go see it in the theater, but we ran into some difficulties. So we also watched it on HBO Max. But I am definitely seeing this in the theater.
Yeah, I
there were several scenes where I was like, "Oh man, I want to see this on a big screen."
Yeah, just the wide shots of the desert planet, I think, on the big screen would just give you such a scale of the desolation and the heat and the feeling of, how hard it would be to survive out there. It would just bring all of that home. And then even the space scenes where you see the giant Space Guild ships and all of these frigates that on the planet's surface seem enormous, but yet in the scale of these giant guild transport ships are just like, fleas.
Pinheads.
Yeah, right. So I think all of that would really come alive on the big screen. So I do want to definitely see it at the theater.
So one last thing I think we should talk about, I mean, we kind of touched on it a bit as how amazing the music was. And I've read it described as like a reset for Hans Zimmer, because you can tell Hans Zimmer music, and he really took on some new sounds and new melodies for this movie that I absolutely appreciated. And I guess they've released his soundtrack in 3 albums for this movie, and I can totally see why.
Yeah, it was great. I thought the music was the music worked so well that you don't really even notice it. And that's tough to do, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know if this was just me though, but I liked the music, but it just seemed to be mixed into the movie so loud sometimes that you couldn't hear characters.
And maybe that was intentional. I don't know. It wasn't memorable for me. I remember it being good, but it was the scenery and specific scenes were what I took away. And I'm pretty audio when it comes to movies. I know themes to movies pretty well, even in just very, very small clips. I couldn't pick one out for you in terms of Dune, and so that's not to say that it was bad, but there's no reoccurring theme I guess I could pick out. However, it did feel authentic and spoke to the different houses, I think, and to the current situation. But it wasn't something I walked away thinking, the score was amazing. I'm going to say it was just because it seemed to mesh so well with everything else going on, but it wasn't a standout thing.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Now that you mention it, I didn't walk away like, what's the theme of Dune? If you were to play that in the background, like everyone, you play Jurassic Park, you play Terminator, you hear those beats and oh, this movie. Now that you mention it, no, that is a good critique, that there is there's nothing that stood out from that.
See, for me, like I was still hearing the score from the David Lynch movie in a lot of the scenes. That's da 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 da.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't the music for me didn't really jump out. I mean, it seemed like it was right for the show. I don't remember it being too loud, but I got to watch it again. And I think seeing it in the theater will probably make a big difference as well.
And I appreciated the moments of silence when there was no music.
Yeah.
Because I felt that helped draw you in.
You don't have to put a score to everything. There are moments where it should just be silence.
Yes.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it there. It's heartily recommend you get out and see Dune, either in the theater or on HBO Max, or both, which I think a number of us are going to do, and get out there and enjoy it. So thanks for listening to another episode, and we will catch y'all next time. Next time we'll be talking about Apple's new Foundation series, or be about 6 episodes in. So be sure to tune in for that. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.